What is up, my dogs? As you all know, Fallout 76 is here, and with this upcoming adventure, you're probably asking yourself, how am I going to survive? Well, the answer is very simple. You take everything that's not bolted to the ground and shoot everything that is. You may or may not have heard, but Bethesda has changed a lot compared to the previous games. Whether that's good or bad, you're still going to need some basics to get yourself situated in this new world. So let's jump right in. Leveling has changed since Fallout 4. While you still gain experience from just about everything you do, such as crafting, fighting, questing, and the new world events, 76 has a new perk and build system. The old perk system has been replaced by cards, and unlike 4's perk leveling system, you level these perks by combining duplicate cards. These perk cards are pretty awesome because you can use them to create any number of builds to fit every situation you may encounter in the wasteland. They're not permanent, so you can equip them as you would armor. Just keep in mind that every card has a point system. The more you upgrade your cards, the more expensive they're going to be. So you can't just stuff a card into every orifice in your body. We're not playing Hearthstone here. Since you can equip cards as you please, you can hot swap these cards whenever you want to pick a lock, hack a computer, or just change your build. Using hacking as an example, you can equip the card, hack your computer, and then replace it with something more useful, such as first aid. And the way you get perk cards is through leveling, looting, or rewards. You get perk packs that contain 4 randomly selected cards, and they're awarded on levels 4, 6, 8, and 10, and then every 5 levels thereafter. Keep in mind, some of these cards may not be immediately available to you, as they might require a certain level to equip. And in order to increase the amount of perk cards you can equip per slot, you'll need to level up your special attributes. Strength affects your character's power in melee and how much you can carry. Perception affects weapon accuracy in VATS and awareness of nearby enemies, as well as the ability to detect stealth movement. Endurance affects your health, disease resistance, and action point drain while sprinting. Charisma is very different than previous games, as it is primarily designed for group play, allowing you to share your perk cards with your group. If you plan on playing with others, which is highly recommended, I recommend having at least one charisma build in each group. In order to share perk cards, your charisma needs to be 3 times that of the value of the card. So if you wish to share a perk card with a value of 3, you will need 9 charisma in order to do so. It also allows for better rewards and prices when bartering. Intelligence determines your character's ability to hack and affects the durability of crafted gear and the return from scrapping weapons. Agility affects your action point total in VATS and determines the effectiveness of sneaking. Finally, luck determines your character's recharge rate of critical hits and the quality of items that you find. With every level of each attribute, you increase the amount of perk card points you can equip. For example, if you've got an agility of 4, you can carry 4 1-point cards, or 1 3-point card and 1 1-point card, all totaling 4 points. A final note, some perks are passive while some are active. If you use the Scrounger perk card, you'll have to activate it by pressing space on a container rather than just looting from it. Just having it equipped will do nothing for you, so be sure to read each and every perk card. I bet you guys and gals are excited to start camping and get your base set up, but don't do what I did and build right next to the Overseer's camp. Her camp comes stocked with everything you'll need for the first few hours of gameplay, so there's no rush. And aside from impressing the local wildlife, who tried to shoot and break my stuff, my camp was entirely useless to me. Yeah, I'm looking at you, K1 Lur B3 Iced. The important item to note in the Overseer's camp is the blue box labeled My Stash Box. These boxes are your main method for storing things. They are also account exclusive, and no matter where you find a My Stash box, you'll be able to find your personal things that you stored in there. Aside from the Overseer's camp, you can find these at Red Rocket gas stations or train stations located throughout the wasteland. If you're tired of waiting and want to get started anyways, I suggest building your camp close to Flatwoods, one of the first towns you'll come across as you follow the main quest, so that you can gather and store items more quickly. Camps aren't permanent, so you can pick them up and move them wherever you wish. Just note that it costs caps per move. But I wouldn't worry too much about the cost, as caps are really easy to come across and relocating your camp is relatively cheap. The only issue you'll run into in setting up your camp are boundaries. You cannot set up a camp inside of towns or special areas such as events. If you try, your camp will be red, indicating that you cannot build there. The best thing to do is to equip your camp and start running while screaming loudly. The screaming helps ward off potential squatters. The best thing about the camp is that wherever you go, whatever you build goes with you. Even buildings. In your Blueprint tab, you can find prefabricated structures that you've already built, and you can drop them anywhere where there is space. So you can build yourself a nice home and pick it up and move whenever you want to. Also, once you spend the resources for items such as generators, workbenches, beds, and more, when you move they'll remain in your camp menu to place for free. That way you'll only have to spend the resources initially, and whenever crafting more than one of that item. A couple build tips. If you hold shift while in your build menu, your WASD keys will mimic that of arrow keys, allowing you to scroll through your menu options much faster. Also, holding the V key will bring up your build menu so you don't have to run to your camp every time you wish to build. My final camp tip: any blueprint that you find in the wasteland is not learned immediately. They are stored in your Notes tab of your Pip-Boy and must be clicked on in order to acquire them. Crafting is very similar to 4. You're going to need a lot of resources. A lot. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, take everything that isn't bolted to the floor. Initially, at least. I say initially because one of the biggest downsides that I've found of this game is the very limited storage. Unless they change it, 400 pounds is your max. Which may seem like a lot if you're new to Fallout, but it's hardly anywhere near a lot, and it'll fill up very fast. Some people ended up maxing out with just a few hours of playing. And no matter how many stash boxes you build, you can't add to it. Trust me, I tried. That aside, some of the first things you want to build are a raised bed, a water pump, or purifiers if you have them, and food. You want a raised bed ASAP in your camp so that you can get the buff from sleeping. And you can find the plans for a raised bed at the Overseer's work camp on one of the workbenches. Sleeping is important because you gain a well-rested buff if you sleep long enough, which boosts your experience gained, as well as regenerating your health very slowly. Being well-rested is something you want to have on you at all times. This buff will boost your experience gained by 5% for 2 hours. You can use the bed at the Overseer's camp initially, but try to build your own bed as soon as possible. You're going to need to build all the workbenches because the workbenches are going to be your bread and butter in this game. Workbenches are where you're going to go to build weapons, craft mods, repair weapons, and build and repair armor as well. Don't get cheap when it comes to your weapons and armor. That's how you're going to survive in the wasteland. They're incredibly helpful. In order to build all the workbenches, you're going to need a lot of aluminum, so keep your eyes out for cafeteria trays, cake pans, TV dinner trays, and aluminum cans. A great source is from following the Overseer's quest to the Morgantown High School, where you'll find quite a lot within the cafeteria. Next thing you want to do is build a water source, be it a water pump or a water purifier, and try to get mutfruit growing. Because of how beneficial it is to have purified water, once you unlock access to water purifiers, I recommend building your camp only near a water source. You want to get food going as soon as possible. It is a cheap and easily produced method for farming very good buffs. And you can have more than one buff running at the same time. Similar buffs will not stack. If you consume something that gives you plus 10 to your ability points, and then another item that gives you plus 20, the plus 20 will override the plus 10. Furthermore, being well-fed and hydrated gives you amazing buffs in their own right. And once you unlock water purifiers, you have no excuse to not be well hydrated at all times. Because of how amazing these buffs are, you're going to be one of producing a lot of crops. To do this, you're going to need fertilizer. An early fertilizer is a little bit difficult to come by, as your main source is going to be spoiled food. Food will eventually spoil that's not preserved, such as cooked foods or the vegetables you grow. And one of my favorite spots to get a nice variety of food is to head down to the Morgantown Airport, and to the north you'll find a garden that contains taters, corn, razor grain, and pumpkins. And as you'll soon find out, space is not unlimited. Your budget only allows for a certain amount of objects to be placed at a time. Moving your camp will take everything that you built previously and store it in the Stored tab. And all stored items count towards your current budget. To fix this, just scrap everything you don't intend on building. While loot and container drops are individually instanced, world objects are not. So if your buddy picks up a recipe or a blueprint, that will not be available to you until it respawns. But there's no need to shove your buddies out of the way to race towards a blueprint. Once obtained by your buddy or yourself, either of you can build in each other's bases. For example, this mining excavator. I did not have the blueprint, but since my buddy built it in my base, I've learned the recipe and can now build it whenever I want. Next is weapon crafting. It's fairly simple, but 76 does it a little odd, because in order to craft weapon mods, you need to scrap just about every weapon you come across. Scrapping weapons gives you a random chance per weapon to discover a weapon mod for that specific type. Doesn't matter the rarity of the weapon or the mods it already has, it's irrelevant. It's just weird like that. So be sure to pick up and scrap every extra weapon you can, because there's no guarantee if you're going to get the mod you want, or a mod at all, every time you scrap a weapon. And just a warning, building, maintaining, and modding your weapons can be a little bit annoying because you're going to need screws. So be sure to pick up every desk fan, globe, handcuffs, hot plates, toy cars, and typewriters, so you don't get screwed if your weapon breaks. Combat in 76 is pretty much the same as with previous games, with the exception that there is no pausing. So those of you who've played Dead Space should feel right at home. Because there is no pausing, that means VATS has changed to be more of an aimbot than anything. The higher your perception, the more accurate your VATS hit chance will be. Likewise, a higher agility grants you a larger action point pool to get more shots off in VATS. You can use perk cards to augment your VATS abilities, such as allowing you to target limbs such as the head or legs by cycling through your targets using your mouse wheel. If you don't care for VATS, keep in mind that headshots deal increased damage. Seems no matter where you go, organisms have a hard time surviving without a head. And sooner or later you're going to fight a fight that you just can't win. Unless you've got friends around you to revive you. Once your health hits 0, you're dead. Imagine that. I wouldn't worry too much about dying though. The only thing you lose is the junk that you've collected. And that's it. Once you die, your map opens up and you can click a location to where you want to respawn. And once you do, you'll have a waypoint on your screen that'll lead you back to where you died. There you'll find a paper bag that has all your lost belongings. My last bit of combat advice is over PvP. PvP seems to be more for fun than for gain, as you don't really gain a whole lot out of it. As I just mentioned, when you die, you lose your junk. So after going through the effort of fighting, the only thing you really gain is a little bit of caps and somebody else's garbage. If they were over encumbered, they might even thank you for it. Initiating PvP is relatively simple. One player has to shoot the other, and if that player accepts, they shoot back. The initial shot is more so to gain the attention of the player and deals considerably reduced damage. So players who are not interested in PvP will not have to worry about being ganked by better geared or higher level players. Also, if someone is harassing you and shooting you non-stop, you can simply fast travel away, as it's not considered combat nor are they considered enemies. And a little PvP advice: if somebody initiates combat on you, pretend like you're not interested and you just don't care. And when they turn around, pull out your best gun and unload every bullet you've got in the back of their head. There's no honor in the wasteland, only survival. Plus, who's gonna complain if they're all dead? Or you can do what I did, fight a man-to-man, mano-a-mano, and a whole lot of turrets backing me up. And a completely unrelated tip: turns out that a shotgun to the back of somebody's head is extraordinarily effective.